Still have my cold happening, so forgive me if I don't talk too much, although most of you will be happy about that. So Justin and his crazy mother are here to make some pumpkin sugar cookies today.
Yay!
This is actually our last unit in our section on baking. Next week in 2 weeks from now, we start our new unit, which is appetizers and side dishes. Sorry, I had a little brain fart there. So we're going to get started with our pumpkin sugar cookies. So our recipe calls for 3/4 cup sugar. We have 8 people in our family, so I'm doubling the recipe. Cookies is actually one of those things that doubling the recipe usually doesn't make very much difference. So that's why we're going to go with that. So I have 1.5 cups of butter in here. We're going to get it beating, and then we're going to add our sugar, and then we'll come back after that's all mixed so you can have a look at it. Okay, so our butter and sugar have mixed enough, and as you can see, it's very creamy. To tell if your butter and sugar have creamed enough, when you scrape it down from the sides, it shouldn't feel like you're sanding the side of the bowl with a piece of sandpaper. Then you know that you've creamed it enough, and it's all nice and light and fluffy. So do you want to finish scraping down the sides, Justin?
Sure.
And then our next step is going to be to beat in our egg until it's nice and smooth. And then we're also going to mix in our pumpkin and then our vanilla. So again, our quantities are going to be a little bit different than what is on the board because we're doubling our recipe. So why don't you add our eggs in there, Justin? Good job. Give them a scrape just so that we get all the egg in there. We did give our 2 eggs, a little bit of a beat with a fork, just because then that way it kind of gets us a little bit ahead of the game. Good. I think that's good. Just here, can I show you a little trick here? First, let's clean our spatula because it'll be easier. Go around and around your bowl. It's a little bit easier to get everything scraped off than if you try and push down the sides. Okay. So then we're going to scrape this a little bit more and get all the stuff inside so that the whole thing is mixing up.
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead and get that started on, let's just do maybe 2. And we'll let that beat, and then we're going to add our pumpkin. We have our butter, we have our sugar, we have our eggs. Our next step is to add our pumpkin and our vanilla. So go ahead, Justin, pop that in. Yeah, that's good. Get it all. You need it all. Good spatula work. Okay, and then we need, the original recipe calls for 1 teaspoon, or pardon me, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. But again, because we're doubling it, we're going to need a full teaspoon of vanilla. Super job. Look at that. No overspill. Go ahead and add that in. And we're going to let that beat for just a couple minutes. And we will be back as soon as that's all mixed up. So this is our mixture with our vanilla and our pumpkin in. As you can see, it's a tiny bit grainy, but that's because I use my homemade pumpkin. Just a quick thing, when we make sugar cookies, I always like to cut them out in shapes and then color them with a little bit of colored sugar. So I actually had a friend of mine tell me that she never knew how to make colored sugar before, so we're going to go through it because I just explained it but I didn't actually show it. So we got about a heaping tablespoon of sugar in here, and you just add the food coloring and you just smash it with a fork until it's all mixed in. Why don't you try the yellow here, Justin? And you just squish it and mix it and squish it and mix it, and it's a little bit cheaper than buying the sprinkles in the store. Not many people do this anymore. And you just keep mixing it until you get it how you like it. Okay, So I kind of like mine with a little bit darker flecks in it. Keep going, Justin. We're going to do the green. Just 3 drops. Oh, I put an extra one in, so hopefully it'll be fine. You don't want to get it too wet because then as it dries, it'll clump together. And you don't really want it clumpy. You want to be able to sprinkle it. Can you hold your bowl up? It's a little bit easier because all your sugar kind of goes down to the bottom. See? Is that a little bit easier? Yeah. Good. This is our finished sugar. I think it looks really great. Our next step here is we have to add in our spices. So cinnamon, salt, and baking powder. We're going to mix that, and then we're going to add our flour slowly and mixing in between until it gets to the right texture. Okay, so go ahead, Justin, and add our spices and our baking powder and our salt. Okay, let's pop that down and we'll let it mix. Pop down the mixer. We'll give it a little mix. Get that mixed in. Yeah, just low because we don't want it going everywhere. And we also don't want it climbing up the sides. So this is a really good, actually this is like super good texture for our cookies. They're really fluffy. All your butter and your egg and everything has been really fluffed. And now we're just going to add our flour slowly. Just a couple of tablespoons like this at a time. Not measured tablespoons, folks. And we're just going to let that mix in. And we're going to keep doing that. Now again, we're using a double recipe, so on our recipe it says 2.5 cups. This is actually 5 cups of flour. And we're going to mix that up, and when we come back, it should be ready to roll. Okay, so we're back again. This is our finished cookie dough. I did have to add a little bit more flour to it than what the recipe called for, because it wasn't sticking together. Oh, look, I got food coloring all over my hands. It wasn't sticking together the way that it should. And that was just because my pumpkin tends to be a bit damper than your store-bought filling. And you can see, like, the bowl is like, there's nothing left in there. And that's because your dough is dry enough. You know it's ready. Sometimes you gotta add a little bit more flour, sometimes a little bit less. Also depends on how humid your conditions are, because that'll make a big difference on how much flour your how much moisture your flour has absorbed from the atmosphere. So I added probably almost another full cup for mine. It's been a very humid year, so my flour isn't quite as dry as it normally is. But you can see it wants to be in a ball. And that's when your cookie dough is ready, is when it wants to be in a ball. So for sugar cookies, what we do is we're going to roll it out. So I'm just going to form kind of a ball. Some people chill their sugar cookies. They say that that's actually for the best. I do sometimes, but not all the time, because usually when I'm making cookies, everybody wants cookies right away. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll these cookies out now. So we're going to take a little bit of flour and we're going to dust our counter. You don't need a lot of flour. You don't want your cookies to taste like flour, because it's not exactly appetizing. And you'll see it's a nice, rich kind of brown color. And we're just going to give it a little flip. Spread this out a little better. Spread this out. Give it another little flip. Spread this out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just pick up some flour on our rolling pin. So you can just roll it through the flour that you already have on the counter. And again, anytime you're rolling dough, you want to roll it, not stretch it. So you start in the middle and you just roll out. And a good thickness is about 1/4 inch. You don't want it too thick, because then it takes a long time to cook. I've got a little Zerbert there. Let's pull that out. Stretched dough always doesn't do as well. And this dough is absolutely beautiful. It's perfect as far as texture. Now we're gonna cut out our shapes. We got some pumpkins and some kitty cats for Halloween. And you want to try and fit as many cookies in each cutting as you can. You don't want to use a whole bunch of leftover dough, to roll out. You want to have as little leftover dough as you can. And look at this, this isn't even sticking to the cookie cutter. So that is absolutely perfect. So Justin has cut out the rest of our cookies. You can see that we did them as close together as possible. Now, everybody's different. I like to use a sharp knife to get my cookies off of the counter, just in case they stick a little bit. I just find it gives you a nice clean cookie. And we're gonna lay them out on our baking sheets. Now, you'll notice that I'm using stone baking sheets. That's actually my preference. A lot of cookbooks tell you to use, some will say shiny, some will say dull. I prefer stone because stone will be the same color on the top as of the cookie and the bottom of the cookie. They always turn out the same, bottom and top, because the stone matches your heat in your oven a little bit better than any kind of metal does. Metal can get really hot, and shiny can actually radiate a lot more heat than a non-shiny pan. So go ahead, Justin, I'll let you have a try here. Okay. And getting these pumpkins all onto the pan. Okay, when you're doing them, this is what you try and do. Kind of slide under the whole cookie. Okay. And then it separates it from the counter. Go ahead. Well, I think we can get a dozen cookies on that stone. So stones are kind of one of those things that will last you a lifetime if you don't break them by dropping them. You also don't have to scrub your stones, and once your stones are seasoned, you generally don't have to oil them anymore, because the stones do absorb some oil, and they're always ready. These are looking really good. Let's get 12 on there, and then we'll sugar them up, and then we'll slide them in the oven. Hey Justin. Hey Justin. Do you have the hiccups? Yeah. Hey Justin. I got a joke for you. So Frankenstein and Dracula got into a fight. Who won?
I don't know.
Well, Frankenstein, because Dracula sucks. Okay, so that's it. We can only fit 12 on there. That joke went over really well, didn't it? And we're going to decorate with sugar. We're just going to put a few little sprinkles on each. Whoop, don't fall over. And go ahead. Do you want the yellow, the blue, the green? Which one do you want? You want blue? Okay. I want green. So we're going to decorate our pumpkins. Just going to sprinkle a little bit of sugar on them. Especially if you're making them for kids, because kids love sugar. Just sprinkle over top. Hold your hands a couple inches above. You don't need a lot of sugar. We don't want everybody to get a giant sugar rush. So our cameraman apparently prefers yellow. There we go. We're gonna pop them in the oven. Now, our recipe actually calls for 400 degrees, but when you cook with stones, you can never go to a maximum of 350. You can't go to 400 because you will crack your stones, as I found out one time. And so we're gonna leave it at 350 degrees. It might increase the baking time a little bit, but it might not because we're using stone. So we're gonna pop these in the oven. So I'll do the first one, Justin. Okay. And while these are baking, we'll tray up another one. It says that it takes between 6 to 8 minutes. Whenever you have a recipe that gives you a time limit, always start with your shortest time and then check them. And then that way you're not over baking them and you're not getting hockey pucks instead of delicious cookies. So I'm going to set our timer for 6 minutes and we'll be back as soon as... Here's our finished sugar cookies. This is our first batch. You can tell that they're finished because number one, they're super hot and you're going to burn your fingers. They're not shiny anymore. If you look at them in comparison, these ones have puffed up slightly and they're not shiny on the tops. That's a good indication that your cookies are done. So we're going to put them over here to cool for about 5 minutes, and then we'll take them off the pan and we'll pop them onto our rack. It ended up taking 11 minutes for them to bake until they're done. And when we come back, I'll show you that the bottoms are the same color or very close to the same color as the tops, which is the benefit of cooking with stone. Okay, so our cookies are done and they're cool enough that I can touch them. And you can see that the bottom is no darker than the top. The advantage of having stone cookware. Now, because the bottoms are never darker than the top, it's way easier to tell if your cookies are So as you can see, we've done two dozen cookies now. They turned out really nice. And I'm going to show you how to make one more thing that I like to do with sugar cookies and with shortbread cookies and with peanut butter cookies in particular. So I make them into balls. I just use my little scoop here and we roll them into balls. Go ahead, Justin, why don't you give me a hand there, help me roll those out. So we're just going to roll them into a ball shape. Okay, and then we're going to set them up on our cookie tray. These ones are a little smaller, so we can go 4 across. We can probably fit 16 on here. I think that'll do. I don't know, maybe we might be able to fit another row on. I think so, we can fit another row on. Yeah. These ones are going to be much smaller cookies. They're almost like bite-sized cookies. Now I call them drop cookies. They're probably not really called drop cookies. So we got almost all of them on. I'm just going to pull this pan down over here. So I had it up here to cool. And so that what I do is I take a little bit of sugar on my fork and gotta get the sugar on there and just give them a little press crisscross. And you do that for all, and they're not going to spread too awful much. And when we're all done, all of our baking, we'll be back to do our tasting. So thanks for watching so far, and we'll see you probably in about 15-20 minutes. Okay guys, so we all finished our cookies, and our cameraman advised us that the word folks is not very cool. So sorry for that if I'm not very cool. So we're gonna taste this and see how they are. So everybody grab a cookie. You want the yellow kitty?
Yeah.
Yummy.
Very good.
So, what do you guys think?
Good.
Are they nice and soft?
Yeah.
I like my cookies soft. I hate hard cookies. Then I have to dunk them in my coffee and get crumbs in my coffee, and I don't like crumbs in my coffee. So anyways, this is our last episode on baking. Next we're going to be doing appetizers and side dishes. Just to remind everybody, this is actually a cooking class for Justin. I have designed and developed a curriculum to go along with it. If anybody's interested in having a look at that, let me know. Put a comment in the comments. And we'll see you guys again in 2 weeks. Say bye.
Bye.